Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something most people never realize. When a man has 1,000 options, beauty alone won't make you stand out, charm alone won't make him stay, and trying harder will only make you blend into the noise. But there is one thing, one shift in the way you carry yourself, that makes every other option vanish in his eyes. The moment you do this, even once, he will see you as the rarest person in the room, and that is exactly why he'll choose you. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in a room filled with women, all of them beautiful, all of them desirable, all of them trying in their own way to capture his attention. The air is buzzing with competition. Some are trying to be the loudest, some are trying to be the most charming, some are trying to be the most agreeable. And in this crowded space, you might think the only way to stand out is to push harder, to perform more, to constantly prove why you're the one he should notice. But that's not what truly makes a man choose. That's not what makes someone pick you above everyone else, even when he has more options than he could ever handle. The real power lies in one decision, one moment of clarity, one simple act that shifts the dynamic entirely. Because here's the truth, most people spend all their energy trying to be chosen. They give their power away by constantly measuring themselves against who else is in the room. They operate from a place of fear. Fear that they're not enough, fear that he'll see someone else and forget about them. But what if, instead of trying to win the game, you stepped back and remembered that the game doesn't even exist unless you agree to play it? What if, instead of chasing his attention, you gave him something far rarer, something so many women forget to give? What if you gave him the experience of knowing that you are not afraid to walk away if he doesn't see your worth? That is the moment everything changes. When you show a man, not through words but through action, that you have standards higher than his ego, he pays attention. You can laugh with him, connect with him, enjoy him, but you never give the impression that you are desperate to secure him. You let him feel the weight of your value by not being available at every drop of a hat, by not bending yourself into someone you're not just to fit what you think he might want, by not rushing to please him just because you fear losing him. That restraint, that quiet confidence, that subtle boundary, it's the one thing that cuts through the noise of 1,000 other options. A man who has endless choices is not impressed by beauty alone. He's seen beauty. He's surrounded by charm. He's entertained by flattery. What he hasn't experienced often is a woman who doesn't feel the need to compete, a woman who knows that the most magnetic energy in the world comes from self-respect. Because when you respect yourself, you move differently. You speak differently. You're not afraid of silence. You're not afraid of space. You're not afraid of what happens if he gets distracted, because you know you don't need to be the one clinging to keep his focus. You allow him to do the work of proving he deserves yours. When you do this even once, when you allow yourself to step back instead of chasing forward, you give him something every man craves but doesn't always admit: the challenge of earning you. Not in a manipulative way, not in a game-playing way, but in the sense that he feels he has to rise to your level, that he has to invest not because you demanded it, but because you created the space where his effort matters. He realizes that your time is not guaranteed, that your affection is not automatic, that your presence is not something he can take for granted. And suddenly his 1,000 other options fade into the background, because what is abundance worth if none of it feels meaningful? The key here is subtlety. It's not about dramatic ultimatums or bold declarations of your worth. It's about a quiet inner strength that radiates in every small decision you make. When you don't answer his message immediately, not because you're playing a game, but because you're actually living your life. When you decline an invitation that doesn't align with your values, not because you want to punish him, but because you won't compromise your standards. When you speak your truth, even if it risks his approval, not because you're trying to control him, but because your authenticity matters more than his validation. That kind of energy is unforgettable. And the fascinating part is, it often takes just one experience of this for a man to see you differently. You don't need to perform it 100 times. You don't need to constantly prove it. The moment he feels that you are not afraid to lose him, he sees that he could very well lose you. And in that moment, he realizes that choosing you is not about convenience. It's about not wanting to live without the rarest energy he's found. It's about protecting the connection he feels with someone who doesn't just make him feel desired, but also makes him step into the best version of himself. Think about how many people bend themselves out of shape to be liked. How many people dilute their standards just to keep someone around? How many people exhaust themselves proving their worth? Now imagine being the one who doesn't. Imagine the relief, the confidence, the magnetism of knowing that you will never beg someone to see your value, that you will never compete for someone's attention. That if he has 1,000 women lined up, he'll still choose you because you're the only one who isn't trying to be chosen. This is not arrogance. This is not indifference. This is alignment. It's knowing that true connection cannot be forced. And if it's real, it doesn't need to be chased. It's knowing that your worth is constant, regardless of how many others he meets. It's understanding that what makes you stand out isn't louder words or grander gestures. It's the courage to let go of what doesn't align with you. And the beauty of this approach is that it doesn't just make him choose you. It makes you choose yourself. It shifts the balance of power from external validation to internal certainty. It gives you freedom because you're no longer trapped in the exhausting cycle of comparison. You're not in the business of competing. You're in the business of living in your truth. And the moment you do this, even just once, you'll feel the shift. You'll feel how magnetic it is. And so will he. And so will he, because when a man encounters that kind of strength, he feels something different inside of him. He doesn't just see someone attractive. He feels compelled to rise. He senses that you are not leaning on him for validation, and that shifts his entire perspective. When he realizes that you are not sitting around waiting to be chosen, he feels the urgency to step up and claim you. Because deep down he knows you don't wait around for anyone. That is the kind of presence that stands out from the crowd of endless options. It isn't louder, it isn't flashier, it isn't desperate. It's calm, grounded, magnetic. The power is in the energy you carry. When you walk into a room knowing that your worth is not negotiable, people feel it before you even say a word. They sense that you're not there to compete or prove yourself. You're simply there to be. And because you are so centered in yourself, people lean in. They want to understand why you're not scrambling for approval like everyone else. They want to know what you know about yourself that makes you so secure. That kind of energy is contagious. It makes others feel like they need to raise their game just to be around you. Most people don't realize how rare this is. They think men are always chasing the most beautiful woman or the one who makes things the easiest for them. But what really captures a man's attention in a lasting way is the woman who doesn't need him to feel valuable, because when he sees that you already value yourself, he feels both the respect and the challenge of having to live up to that. It's not about you making him feel small. It's about you giving him the gift of realizing that nothing worth having comes without effort. And that effort is exactly what makes him value it once he has it. This is where most people go wrong. They assume that giving someone everything up front will make them stay. They think that being endlessly available, endlessly giving, endlessly accommodating will secure someone's love. But what that really does is teach the other person that your value comes cheap. If they don't have to work for your attention, if they don't have to earn your investment, if they don't feel the possibility of losing you, then they won't treasure you. They'll take you for granted, not because they're cruel, but because that's human nature. We don't value what we don't have to protect. So when you make the decision, even once, to hold back your energy until it's truly earned, you reset the rules of the game. You stop teaching him that your affection is automatic. You stop showing him that no matter what he does, you'll still be there. And instead, you start showing him that you are someone who must be respected, someone who must be chosen with intention, someone who is not afraid to leave if the energy isn't reciprocated. That shift in dynamic is magnetic. It makes him lean in instead of lean out. It makes him chase instead of retreat. It makes him realize that you're not just another option, you're the option he can't afford to lose. There is also something deeply attractive about restraint. In a world where so many people give too much too soon, the ability to hold back is powerful. When you don't rush into intimacy, when you don't overshare your emotions before trust is built, when you don't give away your whole self before someone has shown they deserve it, you create mystery, not artificial mystery, but genuine intrigue. He begins to wonder about you, to think about you, to crave your presence because you haven't given it all away instantly. That space you create makes him invest emotionally, And emotional investment is what bonds people far more than physical attraction ever could. Men may be drawn initially to surface qualities, but they stay for depth. And depth is revealed when you show that you are not only capable of connection, but also capable of boundaries. That you can be soft and feminine, but also strong enough to walk away. That you can be warm and loving, but also discerning about who receives that warmth. When you embody that balance, you're not just another person to pass time with, you're the one he sees as irreplaceable, because anyone can be nice, anyone can be fun, anyone can be attractive. Very few can be strong enough to say no when it matters. It's also important to recognize that this isn't about playing games or withholding affection for the sake of it. It's about alignment. When you know who you are and what you deserve, you naturally filter out what doesn't serve you. You naturally give less energy to people who don't show up in the right way. You naturally protect your heart instead of throwing it at someone who hasn't proven they can hold it. And because this comes from a place of self-awareness, it never feels manipulative. It feels powerful. It feels authentic. And that authenticity is exactly what makes it work. Think of how liberating it is to realize that you don't need to compete. You don't need to perform. You don't need to win some invisible contest. All you need to do is embody your own value so fully that anyone who wants to be with you has to rise to it. And the fascinating part is when you carry yourself this way, you'll notice that not everyone even tries. Some men will fall away, some will be intimidated, some will give up quickly. That's good, because the right one will be the one who doesn't run. The right one will be the one who sees that you're not easy to win, and instead of backing down, he'll step up. That's how you filter out the noise of the 1,000 options and reveal the one who actually matters. And here's another truth most people overlook. The one thing that scares a man more than competition is the possibility of irrelevance. When he senses that you could walk away and never look back, it ignites something primal in him. He realizes that he could lose something he will never replace. He feels the urgency to act, to decide, to commit. He's no longer comparing you to the other women in the room because they don't carry the same weight. They don't carry the same energy. They don't make him feel the same fear of loss. That is why when you hold this power just once, it changes everything. It's not about perfection. You don't need to have all the answers or never make mistakes. You don't need to play some flawless role. What you need is conviction. Conviction in your worth. Conviction in your boundaries, conviction in your ability to walk away from anything that doesn't honor you. That conviction is what sets you apart from everyone else. It's what makes you unforgettable. And it's what makes him choose you, not because you begged, not because you competed, but because deep down, he knows he won't find this anywhere else. That is why the power of doing this even once is so profound. The moment you show it, the moment you live it, everything shifts. It's the moment he realizes that he is not in control of the dynamic because you are not afraid of losing him. And that realization makes him fight to win you in a way he never would for anyone else. It makes him step out of his comfort zone. It makes him choose decisively. It makes him value you above all the noise. Because out of 1,000 women, you're the one who doesn't need to be chosen. And that is exactly why you are. Because out of 1,000 women, you're the one who doesn't need to be chosen. And that is exactly why you are. When a man feels this, something awakens inside of him that competition alone could never trigger. He realizes that what he's dealing with is not someone who is trying to hold on to him, but someone who is secure enough to let go if the energy isn't right. That is terrifying and electrifying at the same time because it forces him to ask himself a deeper question: what would my life look like without her? And when he runs that scenario in his mind, when he imagines her absence, he realizes quickly that it isn't a reality he wants to face. That's when you become unforgettable. Not because you gave him everything, but because you didn't. Not because you made yourself his safety net, but because you refused to play that role. You become unforgettable because you allowed him to feel what most people never allow: the fear of loss. And loss makes love real. When he knows that he could wake up tomorrow and you might not be there if he doesn't step up, he finally understands the stakes. He finally sees that this is not about convenience, it's about courage. The courage to make a decision, to claim you, to invest fully without holding back. It's also in that space that he begins to reflect on himself. When you don't rush to accommodate him, he has to ask, am I really showing up the way I should? Am I giving enough? Am I the man who deserves her? That reflection is what makes him grow. And growth is what binds a man to a relationship, because it's no longer just about what he's getting. It's about who he's becoming in the process. He feels proud of the effort he's putting in. He feels proud of the standard he's rising to. He feels proud that he's choosing not just someone beautiful, but someone who demands the best version of him. That pride cements his choice, because he doesn't just want you, he wants the man he is when he's with you. And here's the fascinating part. It often takes just one instance of you holding your standard for him to see this. One moment where you say no instead of yes. One moment where you choose your peace over his convenience. One moment where you don't respond with eagerness, but with composure. That single experience creates a ripple effect in his mind. It plants the seed that you are different, that you are not like everyone else he's encountered, that if he doesn't act with care, he could lose you. That seed grows into focus, into clarity, into action. Suddenly, all the noise around him, the endless options, the distractions, the temptations fades into insignificance, because he doesn't want variety, he wants certainty. And certainty comes from you. The magnetic quality in all of this is not that you're untouchable, but that you're self-contained. You don't need external approval to validate who you are. You don't need constant reassurance to know your value. You carry yourself with an energy that says, I am enough with or without you. And that is what makes a man lean in with urgency, because he wants to be part of a life that already feels whole. He doesn't feel like he has to complete you, but he desperately wants to complement you. He doesn't feel like you're clinging for his attention, but he does feel like your attention is precious and must be earned. That difference changes everything. Think about how many people waste their energy trying to convince someone to stay. They plead, they perform, they contort themselves into shapes that feel unnatural, hoping that if they just do enough, they'll finally be chosen. But all that does is create a dynamic where the other person has all the power. And what happens when someone has all the power? They get careless, they stop trying, they assume you'll always be there no matter how little they give. But the moment you refuse to play that game, the moment you choose yourself instead of trying to be chosen, the balance shifts. Suddenly he realizes you're not a guarantee, you're a gift, and gifts must be cherished, not exploited. This is why confidence is not about arrogance. It's not about walking around saying you're better than everyone else. It's about having the quiet strength to know you don't need to beg for love. You don't need to overcompensate. You don't need to measure yourself against the competition. Confidence is rooted in the calm belief that if someone doesn't recognize your value, that's their loss, not yours. And when a man feels that energy from you, he can't help but elevate his game. Because no matter how many options he has, those options feel empty compared to the one person who doesn't need him to feel whole. And here's another truth: attraction without respect fades. He can be enchanted by looks, charmed by words, even pulled in by chemistry. But if respect is missing, it will all eventually collapse. Respect is born the moment you demonstrate that you are not willing to compromise your boundaries for the sake of attention. It's born when you show him that his approval is not worth the price of your dignity. It's born when he realizes that you value your standards more than you value his temporary affection. That respect is what makes him stay. That respect is what makes him choose. Every man has to face the reality of abundance at some point. There will always be more people, more distractions, more opportunities for connection. But abundance without meaning is exhausting. It's shallow, it's unfulfilling. It's a revolving door of temporary highs that leave him empty in the end. When he meets someone who refuses to be part of that cycle, it shocks him into clarity. He realizes that this isn't about who's available, it's about who's irreplaceable. And what makes someone irreplaceable isn't constant presence, it's unwavering value. When you embody that, you don't have to fight for his choice. He chooses you because not choosing you feels like losing something sacred. He chooses you because being without you feels heavier than the burden of commitment. He chooses you because, out of all the options, you're the only one who made him step into his highest self. That is why he stays. That is why he invests. That is why he commits. It's a paradox that the less you need to be chosen, the more likely you are to be chosen, because neediness repels and security attracts. Desperation drains and self-respect energizes. When you need someone to complete you, you inadvertently communicate that you're incomplete. But when you walk into every interaction with the fullness of who you are, you communicate something entirely different. You communicate that being with you is a privilege, not a rescue mission. And privilege is something people fight to keep. This is not about making life harder for him, but about making life richer for you. It's about realizing that you don't win by being picked. You win by living in alignment with your value. And when you live that way, the right person sees it instantly. He doesn't just see someone he wants to date. He sees someone he cannot imagine losing. He sees someone he will choose again and again, even when life gets complicated, even when options surround him, even when distractions appear. Because he knows what it feels like to be in your presence and nothing else compares. And the most extraordinary part is that all of this can begin with a single decision, one moment of restraint, one boundary you hold. One time you choose your peace over his attention. That moment doesn't just change how he sees you. It changes how you see yourself. You realize that you don't need to grip tightly to be valued. You realize that your worth is not tied to anyone else's choices. You realize that the power was never in being chosen. It was in choosing yourself first. And once you feel that, even once, it becomes impossible to go back. It becomes your standard. It becomes your truth. And the right man will always recognize it. And the right man will always recognize it. Because recognition comes not from words he says in the moment, but from the actions he takes when faced with the possibility of losing you. It comes from the way he steps forward when most would retreat, the way he invests when others would withhold, the way he chooses clarity when others drown in indecision. That recognition is born because you created the space for it. You didn't hand it to him on a silver platter. You didn't demand it through constant pursuit. You allowed him to discover it by showing him that you would rather walk away than lower your value. And discovery is far more powerful than persuasion. When someone discovers your worth for themselves, it cannot be unseen, it cannot be dismissed, and it cannot be forgotten. This is why even a single moment of you holding your standard lingers in his mind far longer than any words could. When you hold your ground with quiet strength, he replays it later. He thinks about it when he's alone, when he's considering his choices, when he's tempted by the ease of other options. That memory of you showing him that you don't need to be chosen becomes an anchor. It reminds him that your love is not guaranteed, that your presence is not permanent, that your heart is not a prize he can win once and then stop working for. That reminder is what keeps him present. That reminder is what makes him show up in ways others never inspired him to. And you may not even realize the depth of the impression you've made because you're not consciously trying to craft it. You're simply living your truth, making decisions that honor yourself and carrying yourself with the quiet grace of someone who knows they deserve more than breadcrumbs. That authenticity is what makes it so potent. When he sees that you're not strategizing or manipulating, but simply existing in your worth, he realizes there's no performance here. This is real. This is who you are. And because of that, he knows he can't find it anywhere else, no matter how many options he has. It's also important to recognize that when you stand in this energy, you change the way he experiences the relationship. You're no longer just someone who brings pleasure. You become someone who brings meaning. Pleasure is everywhere. It's fleeting. It's abundant. It's easy to find. Meaning, however, is rare. Meaning is the thing people search for their whole lives without always realizing it. And meaning comes when someone feels challenged in the best way, when they feel that being with you makes them better, when they feel that the standard you live by inspires them to rise. That kind of meaning turns fleeting attraction into lasting devotion. And here's the beautiful paradox. By not needing him, you actually give him the space to want you more deeply. When you don't demand his constant attention, he's drawn to give it freely. When you don't pressure him for commitment, he feels compelled to commit. When you don't overextend to prove your worth, he leans in to prove his. Because relationships that last aren't built on pressure, they're built on choice. And when he feels that you are giving him the freedom to choose while simultaneously showing him the cost of losing you, that choice becomes clear. He chooses you not because you forced his hand, but because every part of him knows it would be madness not to. The reason this works, even in a world full of distractions, is because people crave what feels rare. And true self-respect is rare. True standards are rare. True independence is rare. Most people, when faced with the fear of losing someone they like, will bend, will chase, will lower their guard just to hold on. Very few will have the courage to say, if you don't see my value, I won't try to convince you. That courage is the rarest quality of all, and it's exactly what makes you the person he chooses, even when he has endless options, because options without courage mean nothing. Choices without meaning are empty. He doesn't want abundance if it comes at the cost of losing the one person who makes his abundance feel irrelevant. And don't underestimate the relief he feels when he realizes that you won't let him get away with giving less than he's capable of. Because deep down, every man wants to know he's giving his best. He may resist it at first, he may push against it, but ultimately he respects it. He respects the woman who holds him accountable. He respects the woman who won't let him coast. He respects the woman who doesn't just stroke his ego, but expects his character. Because deep down, he wants to live as that man. And the only way he gets there is by being with someone who won't settle for less. This is why you don't need to fight for attention. You don't need to beg for consistency. You don't need to chase after clarity. All you need to do is embody your own truth so clearly that he sees the cost of losing it. And when he sees that cost, he chooses differently. He invests differently. He treats you differently. Because the truth is, men don't rise for the women who make life easy. They rise for the women who make life meaningful. They rise for the ones who ask them to be more, not less. They rise for the ones who remind them that love without respect is hollow, and that affection without effort is worthless. And the remarkable part is that this doesn't just change how he sees you. It changes how you see yourself. Every time you hold a boundary, you reinforce your own worth in your mind. Every time you choose your peace over his convenience, you strengthen your own confidence. Every time you resist the urge to prove yourself, you prove to yourself that you don't need to. And that internal certainty radiates outward. It makes you even more magnetic. It makes you even more grounded. It makes you even more irreplaceable. Because people are drawn to those who don't need them, but still choose to share their presence. So when he chooses you, it's not because you outperformed anyone else. It's not because you shouted louder, dressed better, or worked harder to please him. It's because you did the one thing almost no one else had the courage to do. You didn't need to be chosen. And in that quiet, powerful refusal to need, you became the one person he couldn't stop choosing. He chooses you because life with you demands his highest self. And he knows life without you would feel like a step backward. He chooses you because in a sea of abundance, you represent something scarce, meaning, depth, and strength. He chooses you because you are the one who showed him that real love is not about clinging, but about freedom. Freedom to walk away, freedom to say no, freedom to be yourself without apology. And that freedom is exactly what makes connection real. Because when you are free and you still choose someone, it means everything. And when he is free and he chooses you, it means everything. That's the kind of choice that lasts. That's the kind of choice that endures even in the face of temptation, even in the presence of options, even in the chaos of life. Because abundance may impress him, but freedom makes him choose. And once he chooses, truly chooses, he never looks back.